Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Sex Here and Now. As always, I'm your host, Matt Lockman. I'm a licensed clinical therapist and ASEX certified sex therapist. And you know what? I love my musings episodes because I just get to sit and ramble, and it may feel chaotic, I don't know, or it may feel super informative. I guess the goal is both, but I, at the time of this recording, just got back from my bachelor party, which we coined the Matchler, TM. And it was a blast. And I feel very lucky to have a lot of supportive people in my life. But I was talking with my one friend, Chrysanthemum Sanders, not her real name. Jeez, I'm not going to tell you my friends' names. That's private. And we got into great conversation about what people do with their sex lives and how my sex life is completely different from her sex life. And while we were exploring that and talking about it, it got me to appreciating my friend group even more because a lot of us are like minded in the fact that we're not trying to judge other people. And that is what the focus of this episode is today, dear listener. I want to talk about how some of you are so focused on other people's sex lives instead of tuning in to your own. Like, what the hell, right? Why do people tend to care so much about what is happening in my bedroom or anyone else's and pass judgment? I think that is the key component here that shows up: judgment. We have this saying in our field to not yuck someone else's yum. Why? Well, because whatever takes place between two or more consenting adults is their business. And honestly, I think a lot of judgment around sex has very little to do with the actual behavior itself and a whole lot to do with fear. You know, fear, our really good friend. Fear of rejection, fear of shame, fear of losing control, fear that maybe someone else is allowing themselves to experience pleasure, freedom, or authenticity in ways that you never felt allowed to. Sometimes when people judge another person's sexuality, what they are really doing is trying to distance themselves from their own discomfort. Think about it. If someone grew up hearing that sex was dirty or sinful or dangerous or something only certain kinds of people do, then seeing someone openly embrace their sexuality can feel extremely threatening. Not because it is actually harmful, but because it activates something unresolved inside of them. Suddenly, they are confronted with all of the rules they learned, all of the desires they pushed down, and all of the questions they never gave themselves permission to ask. That is uncomfortable. And instead of slowing down and exploring that discomfort, people often project it outward through criticism or judgment. I see this constantly with kink and polyamory, queer relationships, casual sex, honestly, even just people being confident in their own bodies. Someone will look at another person and immediately label that person as too much, weird, attention seeking, or unhealthy. But if we slow it down for a second, what is actually happening there? Usually, underneath the judgment is anxiety. Maybe it's envy. It probably is confusion. It could also be grief over never feeling safe enough to explore those parts of themselves. And I think this is why tuning inward matters so much. Because when you constantly focus on everyone else's sex life, you avoid having to ask yourself deeper questions. What do I actually enjoy? What messages did I inherit about sex and bodies? What am I afraid of? Those are vulnerable questions. Those require self reflection. It is way easier to point fingers outward than it is to sit quietly with yourself and unpack your own relationship with intimacy. The people who are the most judgmental around sex are often the people the most disconnected from themselves sexually. And I do not mean that in a cruel way. I actually mean it compassionately, because so many of us were never taught how to safely explore sexuality without shame. if you were like me, you were taught rules before you were taught curiosity. We were all taught fear before we were taught consent. We were taught performance before we were taught connection. So maybe the next time you find yourself judging someone else's consensual sex life, pause for a second, slow it down, tune inward, ask yourself, what is happening inside of me right now? Because your reaction might have more to do with your own fears or unresolved experiences than the actual people you are criticizing. And listen, you do not have to want what someone else wants sexually. I do not want to get fisted, so stop asking me. You do not have to understand it completely. But there is a huge difference between saying that is not for me and saying that is wrong. One of those is self-awareness. The other, well, that's just projection. Sex Here and Now is written and recorded by me, Matt Lockman. For more resources, education, or support, you can find me on all social platforms at Cleveland Sex Therapy. Thanks for being here, and as always, stay curious.